When I first met Vanessa, I thought I had struck gold. She was everything a man could ask for. Stunningly beautiful, sharp-witted, and exuding the kind of confidence that made people stop and listen when she spoke. From the moment our paths crossed at a high-profile networking event in downtown Austin, I knew she was different. She carried herself with poise, her brown eyes shining with intelligence, and her laugh, rich and melodic, made me feel like I was hearing the sound of home. Back then, I was already running my home renovation company, steadily climbing the ranks in the industry. My business wasn't just a job to me. It was my pride, my legacy. I built homes from the ground up, turned wrecks into masterpieces, and gave people the kind of living spaces they had only dreamed about. It wasn't just work, it was art, and I was damn good at it. Vanessa, on the other hand, was a marketing consultant, one of the best in the field, or so she told me. She had a way with words, could sell an idea before it even fully formed in someone's head. She understood the psychology of persuasion, the power of image, and she played the game well. In a way, we made the perfect team, me, the craftsman who built things, and her, the strategist who knew how to sell them. A power couple, as people like to say. We got married after 2 years of dating, and I threw everything I had into making our life together perfect. I poured my heart into our home, a stunning modern house in a peaceful neighborhood just outside of Austin. I personally designed and remodeled it, choosing every fixture, every finish, every damn tile with precision. It wasn't just a house. It was a symbol of us, of what I thought we were building together. Vanessa loved it. Or at least, she acted like she did. She'd walk through the halls, running her fingers over the polished countertops, smiling at the custom-built shelves I installed just for her office. She had a way of making me feel like the king of the world, like everything I was doing was exactly right. But in hindsight, I realize now that Vanessa was always 2 steps ahead. She saw the house, the stability, the success, and she claimed it all like it was her own personal empire. She didn't just marry me. She married the life I built, the security that came with it. And for a while, I was blind to it. I didn't see the warning signs. I didn't see the way her affection started to dwindle, how her admiration turned into indifference, then into something colder. I ignored the way her compliments became fewer and farther between, the way she started coming home later and later. I brushed off the way she'd look at me with just the faintest hint of something I couldn't place, like she was already calculating her exit strategy. I told myself I was overthinking. I told myself we were fine. I told myself she loved me the way I loved her. But Vanessa had other plans, and I was the last one to see it coming. It started subtly. So subtle that if I wasn't paying attention, I might have convinced myself it was all in my head. Vanessa wasn't the same woman I married. I could feel the shift before I could see it, like a storm brewing in the distance. It was in the little things, her touch becoming less frequent, her laughter losing its warmth, the way she no longer looked at me like I was the man she once admired. At first, I ignored it. Every marriage goes through rough patches, I told myself. People get busy, stress piles up, routines change. But deep down, something gnawed at me. She started working late, a lot. At first, it made sense. Her role as a marketing consultant meant client meetings, corporate dinners, and the occasional networking event. I never questioned it. I trusted her. But then the frequency increased. Dinners turned into overnight stays at conferences. Phone calls started getting taken outside. Her voice hushed, her tone careful. Then came the comments. At first, they were small, easily dismissible. A playful jab about how I always had paint on my hands, or how I smelled like sawdust after a long day on site. But then they became sharper, edged with something almost resentful. "You're really going to wear that?" she'd say with a little laugh, as if it was just a joke. "You should think about hiring someone to handle the business side. You're great with your hands, but you're not exactly corporate material." The first time she said it, I let it go. The second time, it stuck with me. I worked hard, damn hard, for everything I had built. I didn't just flip houses like she liked to say. I took neglected homes and transformed them into something beautiful. I gave people a place to build their lives, their families. My company wasn't just a job, it was a legacy. But to Vanessa, it wasn't enough. She started comparing me to the men in her world. The polished executives, the corporate strategists, the men who sat in boardrooms making deals instead of getting their hands dirty. She'd come home late, smelling of expensive perfume and wine, talking about how ambitious some guy at her firm was, how driven he was. At first, I didn't think much of it, but then I realized she never talked about me that way anymore. Then came the unexplained purchases. Vanessa had always liked the finer things in life, but lately, it had gotten out of hand. Shopping bags piled up in the bedroom, designer dresses, shoes, jewelry. When I asked, she brushed it off. Oh, it was just on sale. Don't worry about it. But I did worry, because I knew what I was looking at. These weren't impulse purchases. They were gifts, not ones she bought for herself, but ones she was receiving. Still, I stayed quiet. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe she just needed space. And then, one night, I found the necklace. I came home late after finishing a project and found Vanessa in bed, already asleep. Something felt off. The room smelled faintly of cologne, but not mine. The air was thick with an unease I couldn't shake. As I walked past her vanity, I noticed a small black box sitting half open. Inside was a necklace, a delicate, expensive piece I knew for a fact I had never bought her. I picked it up, my chest tightening. There was a card tucked inside. For you. Can't wait to see you again. No name, just those words, and my stomach dropped. The weight of it settled on me in a way I couldn't ignore. I stood there for a long time, staring at that necklace, at the delicate chain that symbolized something I didn't want to admit. She was cheating. It wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was proof. I could have woken her up right then, demanded an explanation, but I didn't. I put the necklace back in its box, set it down exactly where I found it, and walked out of the bedroom. I sat on the couch in the dark, running through every interaction we'd had in the last few months, piecing together the puzzle I had refused to see. The missed calls, the distant stares, the way she always seemed to have somewhere else to be. And now this. By the time she woke up the next morning, I had already made my decision. I wasn't going to pretend anymore. Over breakfast, I placed the necklace box in front of her on the kitchen table. She looked at it, then at me, her expression carefully controlled. "Where'd you find that?" she asked, too casual, too rehearsed. I didn't take the bait. "Who gave it to you?" I asked, my voice steady. For a split second, I saw it. The flicker of guilt, the hesitation. But then it was gone, replaced by something even colder. She sighed, pushing her coffee aside. "Does it matter? Does it matter?" I felt something inside me snap. "Yeah, Vanessa, it matters." She leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. "Look," she said, voice devoid of any real emotion. "I need more than what you can give me." That was it. That was her explanation. No apologies. No remorse. Just a statement of fact. I stared at her, trying to process how the woman I had built a life with, the woman I had trusted, had turned into this. "So what now?" I asked, my voice eerily calm. She stood up, grabbing her purse. "I think we both know where this is going." She had one foot out the door already. As she walked away, I sat there, gripping the edge of the table, my knuckles white. She thought she had one. She thought she had me figured out, that I would just roll over and let her take everything. She had no idea what was coming. A week later, the divorce papers arrived. I knew they were coming, but holding them in my hands felt different. It was one thing to suspect your wife was ready to walk away. It was another to see her name printed neatly at the top of a legal document, alongside the demand that she wanted half of everything I had built. I sat at the dining table, staring at the thick envelope. The house was quiet, too quiet. Vanessa wasn't here. She had barely been home at all these past few days. Maybe she was staying at a hotel. Maybe she was with him. The thought made my jaw tighten. I flipped through the pages, reading the legal jargon that spelled out how she expected to walk away with my money, my house, and my business. The audacity. I had built everything I owned before she came into my life. The company, the properties, the financial stability. I had put in the sweat, the late nights, the years of grinding. Vanessa had supported me in the beginning, sure, but she never lifted a hammer, never took a financial risk, never sacrificed the way I did. And yet, here she was, expecting half. Then, at the very bottom of the stack, was the real gut punch. I've been seeing someone else. We're moving in together. It was written in the cold, sterile language of a lawyer, but the impact was the same. She had been cheating for months. She hadn't just decided to leave. She had planned this, piece by piece. And now, she wasn't just divorcing me. She was trying to rob me blind so she could start a new life with her new man. The anger that had been simmering inside me erupted into something sharper, colder. It wasn't heartbreak. It wasn't sorrow. It was clarity. Vanessa thought she was outmaneuvering me. She believed I was just some hard-working guy who didn't understand the fine print, who would blindly sign away everything. She had no idea what she was dealing with. I picked up my phone and dialed the one number I knew I could trust. Marcus, it's happening. She filed. Marcus Holloway, my attorney, had been with me from the start of my career. He had helped me set up my business, structure my assets, and protect everything I worked for. Unlike Vanessa, I had been thinking long-term from the beginning. There was a pause on the line. Then Marcus exhaled sharply. I figured she would. She never struck me as the type to leave quietly. She wants half, I said flatly, running a hand over my jaw. The house, the company, everything. Marcus let out a dry chuckle. Yeah, well, she's about to be very disappointed. I leaned back in my chair. Tell me everything. Marcus explained it in simple terms, terms that made my lips curve into a slow, knowing smile. Vanessa thought she could take what was mine, but she didn't realize that I had already fortified every inch of my financial life. The house? Owned by my business, not me. The business? Protected under a legal trust she had zero claim to. My assets? Spread across LLCs and accounts that were shielded from marital division. In short, Vanessa had nothing. She's not going to take this well, I muttered. Probably not, Marcus agreed. But you need to play it smart. Don't react. Let her think she's in control until we hit her with the truth in court. I exhaled slowly, staring down at the divorce papers one last time before pushing them aside. Let her think she won. For now. That evening, Vanessa came home. She walked in with that same smug expression she had been wearing ever since she started pulling away from me. She wasn't carrying any guilt, just entitlement. Like this was her victory lap. Did you get the papers? She asked, setting her designer handbag on the kitchen counter. I nodded, keeping my expression unreadable. Yeah, I got them. She studied me for a second, maybe expecting an outburst. When I didn't give her one, she tilted her head. You don't seem surprised. I shrugged. Should I be? Her lips twitched slightly, like she was suppressing a smile. No, I suppose not. We both knew this was coming. I watched her carefully. She looked relaxed, confident. She thought she had everything in the bag. You're moving in with him? I asked casually, testing her reaction. She didn't even blink. Yes. No hesitation. No guilt. No second thoughts. I nodded, my fingers drumming lightly against the table. Good luck with that. She gave me a puzzled look, but I didn't say anything else. I didn't need to. Let her believe she was in control. Let her think she had me cornered. Because soon, she was going to realize just how wrong she was. Vanessa assumed I would roll over and let her take everything. That's what she was banking on. That's why she had walked into the house last night with that smug little smirk, speaking in that condescending tone, acting like she had already won. She thought I was just some hard-working guy with no legal knowledge, someone who would crumble under pressure, sign the divorce papers, and let her walk away with half of my life. She had no idea who she was dealing with. The second she left for the office in the morning, I called Marcus again. She still thinks she's winning, I said, pacing my home office. Marcus chuckled dryly. She's about to have a reality check. How airtight are we on this? I asked, gripping the edge of my desk. Is there any chance she can challenge it? Nope, Marcus said confidently. Your company owns the house, not you. Even if she tries to argue for marital property, she has no claim. The business is protected through an LLC under the trust. She can't touch that either. She's got nothing. I exhaled slowly, letting his words sink in. I had always been careful, always thinking a few steps ahead. The moment Vanessa and I got married, I knew there was a chance things wouldn't last forever. Not because I didn't love her, but because I had seen too many men lose everything in a divorce because they weren't prepared. I was prepared. All right, I said, my voice calm measured. Let's play this right. I want to wait until we're in front of the lawyers. I want her to think she's still in control until the last possible second. Marcus laughed. Damn, you really want to see her face when she realizes? Oh, absolutely, I said. She thinks I'm an idiot, Marcus. She thinks I don't know how the game works. Then let's remind her. I hung up, feeling a sense of calm determination settle over me. This wasn't just about protecting what was mine. It was about making sure she understood the consequences of her choices. That night, Vanessa came home late again. She barely glanced at me as she walked past, heading straight to the bedroom. She didn't even pretend to care anymore. I followed her, leaning against the doorway as she kicked off her heels and unbuttoned her blouse. You seem pretty confident about this divorce, I said casually. She didn't even turn around. Why wouldn't I be? I studied her, the way she carried herself like someone who had already moved on. You really think you're getting everything, don't you? That got her attention. She turned, her lips curving into a slow, almost pitying smile. I don't think. I know. I nodded, suppressing the smirk threatening to break across my face. All right then, I said, pushing off the doorway. Let's see how it plays out. She watched me for a second, probably trying to decipher why I wasn't angry, why I wasn't breaking down the way she expected. But she shrugged it off, convinced she had already won. The next few days were spent watching Vanessa dig her own grave. She started making plans openly, talking about selling the house, moving in with her new boyfriend, discussing settlements like the money was already hers. I said nothing, just watched, just waited. She still had no idea. The morning of the legal meeting, I dressed like it was any other day. Vanessa, on the other hand, looked like she was walking into a coronation. She wore a crisp white dress, paired with designer heels, her makeup flawless. She was radiant, basking in the glow of what she thought was her victory. You ready? She asked as we stepped into the car. I smiled. More than you know. The meeting was held at a sleek downtown law firm. Marcus was already there when we arrived, seated across from Vanessa's lawyer, a polished man in an overpriced suit who looked a little too confident. Vanessa walked in like she owned the place. She took a seat beside her lawyer, crossing her legs, giving me that same patronizing smile. We're prepared to move forward with the division of assets, her lawyer began smoothly, given the length of the marriage and the shared contributions. Stop, Marcus interrupted, placing a thick folder on the table. Vanessa's lawyer blinked. Excuse me? Marcus flipped open the documents. Before we go any further, I'd like to clarify a few things. The house, he tapped a page, is not marital property. It's owned by my client's company, which is structured under an LLC. Mrs. Reynolds has no claim to it. A pause. A shift. Vanessa's lawyer stiffened. Vanessa's confidence faltered. That's impossible, she said quickly. I lived there for years. It's my home. No, Marcus corrected, his tone deadly calm. It's his business property, not yours. You have no legal right to it. Silence. Her lawyer shuffled through the papers, his brows furrowing. He hadn't seen this coming. Additionally, Marcus continued, flipping to another section, the business itself is protected under a trust. Your client cannot claim ownership or financial stake in it. That means she is entitled to exactly. He pulled out another sheet, scanning it briefly before setting it down in front of Vanessa's lawyer. $0. The silence in the room was deafening. Vanessa's face paled. This isn't. She turned to her lawyer, her voice rising slightly. There has to be something we can do. Her lawyer cleared his throat, struggling to regain composure. We may need to review this further before proceeding. Marcus smiled, leaning back. Take all the time you need. Vanessa turned to me, and for the first time in a long time, she looked afraid. You, she started, her voice almost shaking. You set me up? I tilted my head. No, you set yourself up. I just protected what was mine. I stood, buttoning my jacket. If you'll excuse me, I have work to do. Vanessa sat frozen, her mouth opening and closing like she wanted to scream but didn't know where to start. As I walked out of that room, I didn't look back. She thought she had outplayed me. She had no idea she was never even in the game. The day we went to court, Vanessa walked in with that same smug, self-assured confidence she had carried for weeks. She had her new boyfriend, Ryan Cooper, right beside her. He was exactly the kind of man Vanessa always gravitated toward. Flashy, arrogant, and completely unaware of what was about to happen. The way he strutted in hand with my wife, as if he had already won, made me want to laugh out loud. They thought this was their victory lap. They had no idea. I sat on my side of the courtroom, calm and composed, my lawyer Marcus beside me. The moment Vanessa and Ryan saw me, Ryan smirked, leaning in to whisper something in her ear. Vanessa laughed, too loudly, as if putting on a performance for me, a final act of mockery before they took everything I had built. I didn't react. I just waited. The judge entered, and the proceedings began. Vanessa's lawyer stood first, giving his well-rehearsed speech about how Vanessa had supported me throughout the marriage, how she had been an equal partner in everything I owned. He painted the picture of a devoted wife who had sacrificed for my success, making it sound like she had built my business with her own two hands. I nearly rolled my eyes. Then, Vanessa's lawyer boldly declared that she was entitled to half of my assets, including the house and business. The judge turned to Marcus. "Counselor, how does your client respond?" Marcus stood, as relaxed as ever. "Your Honor, before we discuss division of assets, we need to clarify a few details." He pulled out a thick stack of documents and placed them on the judge's desk. "The house my client resides in is not marital property. It is owned by a business entity that was established before the marriage. Mrs. Reynolds has no legal claim to it." Vanessa's lawyer visibly stiffened. Ryan's smirk started to fade. Vanessa's fingers clenched around her pen. The judge flipped through the documents. "And what about the business?" Marcus barely concealed his grin. "The business is also protected by an LLC and a trust, which Mrs. Reynolds has no stake in. Her name was never on any legal documents. She is entitled to nothing from it." There was a moment of dead silence. The realization finally hit Vanessa. Her mouth fell open slightly, eyes darting between me, Marcus, and the judge. Ryan shifted beside her, his confidence rapidly crumbling. Her lawyer cleared his throat and tried to regain control. "Your Honor, we request a continuance to further examine these documents." "No," Vanessa interrupted, her voice sharp and desperate. "This is my home. I live there. That makes it marital property." Marcus turned to her, completely unfazed. "It never was your home. It belongs to the company. You were a guest in a corporate-owned residence." The judge glanced at Vanessa's lawyer. "Is your client contesting legal documentation?" Her lawyer hesitated. He knew there was nothing they could do. Vanessa finally turned to me, glaring. "You knew," she hissed. I met her gaze evenly. "Of course I knew. Did you think I built everything from nothing and didn't have a plan?" Ryan suddenly leaned over and whispered something harshly in Vanessa's ear. His entire demeanor had shifted. He was no longer the cocky, self-assured boyfriend who had walked in thinking he was about to steal another man's life. Now, he was angry. The judge adjusted his glasses. "Mrs. Reynolds, given the overwhelming evidence, the court cannot grant your request for asset division. The business, the house, and all related financial holdings remain in Mr. Reynolds' possession." Vanessa looked like she wanted to scream. Ryan had gone completely still. Vanessa's lawyer hurriedly shuffled his papers, trying to save face. "Your Honor, my client would like to request spousal support in light of her financial dependence." "Denied." The judge cut in immediately. Vanessa's head snapped up. "Mrs. Reynolds is gainfully employed and financially independent. There is no justification for alimony." And just like that, it was over. She had lost everything. As soon as the judge dismissed the case, Vanessa spun to Ryan, her face flushed with anger. "You said you talked to the lawyers," she snapped at him. "You said I would get the house." Ryan yanked his arm away from her. "You told me it was yours. You said you had control." They were arguing, right there in the middle of the courtroom. I just sat back and watched, feeling nothing but satisfaction. Are we done here? I asked Marcus as I stood up. Marcus smirked. Oh, we're done. I straightened my jacket, walked right past Vanessa and Ryan, and didn't look back. Vanessa's collapse. Over the next few weeks, I heard through mutual contacts how badly Vanessa's life fell apart. Ryan dumped her. The moment he realized she had nothing, he bailed, leaving her with no house, no money, no future. Her lavish lifestyle? Gone. Her designer clothes? Pawned. Her confidence? Shattered. She tried to reach out to me once. Sent me a message saying she wanted to talk. I didn't respond. She made her choice. And now, she had to live with it. She thought she had outplayed me. She had no idea she was never even in the game. Months passed. The house was finally quiet again. No more tense conversations. No more late-night arguments. No more Vanessa. I should have been at peace. And in a way, I was. The divorce had settled, and everything she thought she could take from me was still mine. My house, my business, my future, all intact. Vanessa had walked away with nothing but regret, and I had every reason to move forward without a second thought. But on a random Saturday afternoon, just as I was beginning to truly enjoy my life again, there was a knock at my door. It wasn't a light knock. It was sharp, confident, and filled with the arrogance of someone who thought they had the upper hand. I already had a feeling who it was before I even reached the door. When I pulled it open, I wasn't surprised. There she was, Vanessa, standing right next to Ryan. But what did surprise me was their expressions. They weren't desperate. They weren't defeated. They were grinning. Well, Ryan said, stepping forward with the same smugness he had in court before everything fell apart. You'll be finding a new place to live now? I stared at him for a long moment, waiting for the punchline. When it didn't come, I simply raised an eyebrow. What the hell are you talking about? Vanessa pulled a stack of papers from her purse and held them up like a winning lottery ticket. This house, and everything in it, belongs to us now. She was serious. I let out a slow breath, crossing my arms over my chest. Vanessa, you lost. The house was never yours. She just smirked. Oh, I know. But you made one little mistake. Ryan stepped forward, his confidence oozing from every word. You thought you were so smart, hiding everything behind your business. But guess what? We found a way around that. I didn't flinch. I didn't even blink. I had prepared for this exact moment. So instead of reacting, I simply stepped aside and gestured for them to come in. Come on in, I said. My lawyer will be here in a few minutes. Vanessa hesitated for a split second, but Ryan nudged her forward. They walked inside, acting like they already owned the place. Ryan glanced around, his eyes gleaming. Damn, you really made this place nice, he said, as if he wasn't standing in another man's home. Vanessa smirked, brushing her fingers over the polished kitchen counter. Too bad it's not yours anymore. I let them gloat. Let them soak it in. Let them believe they had finally won. And then, Marcus walked in. The lawyer arrives. Vanessa froze the moment she saw him. Ryan's smirk flickered. Who the hell is this? Marcus walked in, placing a thick folder on the counter. I'm the guy who's about to make your day very, very unpleasant. Vanessa tried to keep her composure. This is pointless, she said, lifting her chin. We have the paperwork. The house is legally ours. Marcus opened the folder, flipping through several key documents. No, Vanessa. What you have is a forged real estate transfer document. A document that, might I add, was never legally filed with the county. Meaning, he looked up, grinning. You own nothing. Ryan shifted uncomfortably. What do you mean forged? Marcus pulled out a signed affidavit from a real estate attorney I had hired months ago. The house was never transferred to Vanessa, nor to anyone else. The deed has been locked under my client's trust for years. Any attempt to file a new deed without authorization is considered fraud. I watched as Vanessa's expression collapsed. Ryan turned to her, his voice low but furious. You said this was handled. Vanessa had no response, because she had nothing left to say. Ryan snatched the papers from her hands, scanning them quickly. You lied to me? His voice was filled with a mixture of rage and disbelief. Vanessa's face was pale. No, She turned back to Marcus. This has to be a mistake. Marcus shook his head. The only mistake was assuming you could get away with this. Ryan was done. He turned to Vanessa, his hands clenching at his sides. You told me this was our house, that you had everything planned. I did, she insisted. I thought I did. You're a joke, Ryan snapped. I put my savings into this. I left my apartment. For what? For nothing? I watched as Ryan's entire demeanor shifted. Gone was the arrogant stockbroker who thought he had outsmarted me. Now, he was just a fool who had bet on the wrong woman. Vanessa reached for him, but he pulled away. We'll figure something out, she pleaded. Ryan just laughed, a bitter, humorless laugh. Oh, we? There is no we anymore. And with that, he walked out, leaving Vanessa standing there, in the house she had once called hers, with nothing left. I let the silence settle before I finally spoke. You know, Vanessa? I exhaled, looking around the home I had built, the home she had tried to take from me. Once upon a time, I really loved you. She turned to me, eyes desperate. We can fix this. I shook my head. No, Vanessa. You did this to yourself. I gestured toward the door. Now get out. Her eyes filled with anger, with regret, with 1,000 emotions she no longer had the power to act on. But she didn't argue. She just left. And as the door closed behind her, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Freedom. I stood in the doorway for a long time after Vanessa left, listening to the echo of her heels clacking down the front steps. The silence that followed felt different this time. Final. The last remnants of her arrogance had shattered in front of me, and I had watched her walk away with nothing but the consequences of her own choices. I should have felt victorious, triumphant even, but all I felt was a strange sort of emptiness. Not regret, just the weight of everything that had led to this moment. Marcus closed the folder, breaking the silence. That was satisfying, he said with a smirk, slipping the papers back into his briefcase. She really thought she had you backed into a corner. She did, I muttered, my eyes still fixed on the door. For a while. Marcus adjusted his tie, giving me a knowing look. You good? I let out a slow breath, rolling my shoulders. Yeah. He studied me for a second before nodding. Well, you handled it like a pro. Most guys in your position would have lost their cool. I finally turned away from the door, shaking my head. That's what she wanted. She wanted me to be angry, to make a scene. But I wanted her to feel what I felt, powerless. Marcus grinned. Well, you got your wish. I walked him to the door, shaking his hand as he stepped outside. Thanks for everything. He nodded. Anytime. Just do yourself a favor. Don't get married again anytime soon. I let out a dry chuckle as he walked off. The door clicked shut behind me, and I was alone again. The house suddenly felt bigger, quieter. For months, it had been a battlefield, filled with tension, unspoken words, and the slow unraveling of something that once felt unbreakable. Now, it was just a house. My house. I walked through the kitchen, running my fingers over the cool granite countertop. Vanessa used to sit here in the mornings, drinking coffee while scrolling through her phone, barely acknowledging me. It was strange how easily I could remember the version of her that had once felt like home, before the lies, before the manipulation, before the betrayal. I pushed the thought away and grabbed a beer from the fridge. I had one. That was all that mattered now. She had tried to take everything, and in the end, she had lost it all. No house, no money, no backup plan. And as for Ryan, he had jumped ship the moment he realized she had nothing to offer him. It was poetic justice, really. I sank onto the couch, exhaling as I took a sip of my drink. For the first time in a long time, I didn't have to worry about what was coming next. No more games, no more court battles, no more surprises. Just peace. But peace felt strange, almost unfamiliar. I had spent so much time preparing for this war that I hadn't thought much about what came after. What was I supposed to do now? Go back to work, throw myself into another renovation project, pretend the last few years of my life hadn't happened? My phone buzzed on the coffee table. I glanced at the screen. A message. From Vanessa. I stared at her name for a long moment, debating whether to open it. I knew what it would be. Some last-ditch attempt to manipulate me, to rewrite the past, to make me question everything I had already accepted. Against my better judgment, I opened it. I made a mistake. Can we talk? I let out a slow breath, shaking my head. Of course, she couldn't just let it go. Even after everything, she still believed she had a chance to spin this into something that benefited her. I typed a single word. No. Then I hit delete. I wasn't going to respond. She didn't deserve closure. She didn't deserve anything from me. Instead, I did what I should have done a long time ago. I deleted her message, blocked her number, and set my phone aside. She had made her choice. Now, she had to live with it. I leaned back, letting the silence settle around me. For the first time in months, I was free. I woke up the next morning to a strange feeling, a lightness I hadn't felt in months. It was the first morning in a long time where I didn't have to brace myself for a fight, didn't have to think about what Vanessa was plotting next, didn't have to sit at the breakfast table pretending like everything wasn't falling apart. It was just me, my house, and the quiet that came with finally being free. I got out of bed and walked through the house, barefoot on the hardwood floors I had installed myself. The sun filtered through the large windows, casting warm light across the open space. I had always loved this house, but for a while, it had felt like a prison. A place where tension hung in the air, where every room held memories of arguments, deception, and broken trust. But now, it was mine. I made coffee, the rich scent filling the kitchen as I leaned against the counter, scrolling through my phone. I had 0 messages from Vanessa. After sending that last pathetic attempt to talk, she had finally realized there was nothing left to say. I opened my work emails instead. That was one thing Vanessa hadn't managed to ruin, my business. The company was thriving, and I had a full list of renovation projects lined up. If nothing else, at least I had that. But even as I skimmed through project details and client messages, I felt restless. For months, my entire life had revolved around fighting to keep what was mine. Every decision I made had been a calculated move to counter Vanessa's betrayal. Now that it was over, I wasn't sure what to do with myself. I glanced at the guest bedroom door, the one she used to use as her office. It was empty now, just a shell of what it had been when she was still here. Without thinking, I grabbed a measuring tape and a notepad. If I was feeling restless, I might as well channel that energy into something productive. I spent the next few hours going over every inch of the house, noting things I wanted to change. A fresh coat of paint in the living room, new lighting in the hallway, maybe even knocking down the wall to expand the kitchen. By the time afternoon rolled around, I had a full renovation plan sketched out. And for the first time in a long time, I felt excited about something again. I was about to grab my keys and head out to pick up supplies when there was a knock at the door. Not again, I sighed, already knowing who it was before I even checked. Vanessa stood on the porch, wearing that same fake confidence she always put on when she was trying to act like she still had control. But this time, there was something else in her eyes, something desperate. "Are you seriously blocking my number now?" she said, crossing her arms. I leaned against the doorframe, completely unfazed. "Figured we had nothing left to talk about." She scoffed, shaking her head. "Come on, you don't even want to hear what I have to say?" "No, Vanessa," I said flatly. "I really don't." She let out a bitter laugh. "So, that's it? You're just cutting me out completely? That's what happens when you betray someone and try to steal their life. Actions have consequences." She frowned, shifting on her feet. I wasn't trying to steal from you." I raised an eyebrow. "Really? You weren't trying to take my business? My house? You didn't try to scam me with forged paperwork?" Her jaw tightened, and for a second, she had nothing to say. I sighed. "Vanessa, just cut the act. You lost. The only reason you're here is because Ryan left you, and you have nowhere else to go." The flash of guilt and anger in her eyes told me everything I needed to know. I shook my head. "Go stay with your parents. Or get an apartment. Either way, I don't care. But you're not coming back here." Vanessa's face hardened. "You really don't care?" I looked her dead in the eyes. Not even a little bit. For the first time, I saw it hit her. The reality of what she had done. She had spent so much time scheming, so much time manipulating and lying, that she had never stopped to think about what would happen if she actually lost. And now, she had nothing. No money, no house, no backup plan, and worst of all, no power over me. She swallowed hard. I thought maybe we could talk. Maybe. No, I said again, cutting her off. We're done. She stared at me for a long time, as if she was waiting for me to change my mind. I didn't. Finally, she let out a slow breath, nodded once, and turned away. I watched as she walked down the steps, got into her car, and drove off. And just like that, she was gone. For good. I stepped back inside, shutting the door behind me, and felt something shift. It wasn't anger. It wasn't resentment. It was relief. For the first time in years, I could finally live my life without Vanessa's shadow looming over me. I looked at the renovation plans still sitting on the kitchen counter. It was time to build something new. The following days were different. The house felt lighter, the air easier to breathe. For the first time in years, I wasn't walking on eggshells, waiting for the next argument, the next manipulative conversation, the next passive-aggressive remark that Vanessa had perfected over time. I woke up when I wanted, ate when I felt like it, worked without interruptions. No unnecessary phone calls. No pointless fights. Just silence. And I loved it. My first order of business was getting rid of everything that reminded me of her. I started in the closet, tossing out every last piece of clothing she had left behind. Some designer dresses still hung there, remnants of the woman who once strutted around my house like she owned it. I didn't donate them. I didn't sell them. I tossed them straight into the trash. Then came the bathroom. Her beauty products, her expensive perfumes, the lotions she swore she couldn't live without. Gone. By the time I got to the kitchen, I was in a zone. The espresso machine she had insisted on getting? Out. The wine glasses we had used for date nights that turned into lectures about how I needed to be more ambitious. Smashed. Piece by piece, I erased Vanessa from my home. And it felt damn good. Once the house was cleared of her presence, I turned my focus back to my work. I had spent too much time worrying about the divorce, about Vanessa's schemes, about keeping what was mine. Now, it was time to move forward. My next renovation project was a massive upscale home on the outskirts of Austin, and it was exactly what I needed. A distraction, a challenge, a way to channel my energy into something productive. I threw myself into it, working long hours, staying on-site late into the evening. I had always loved the process of taking something old and worn down and transforming it into something new. Maybe that's what I was doing for myself, too. One afternoon, I was at the project site, reviewing blueprints with my foreman, when my phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it at first, assuming it was another client, but something told me to check. It was an unknown number. I frowned. Normally, I wouldn't have answered, but a gut feeling told me to pick up. Hello? Silence. Then, a familiar voice. It's me. I sighed. Vanessa. Don't hang up. I almost did, but curiosity got the better of me. What do you want? There was a pause, then a deep breath. I don't know. I guess I wanted to talk. I let out a humorless laugh. About what? The way you tried to steal everything from me? Or the fact that you lost? I'm not here to argue, she said quietly. I messed up, okay? I stayed silent. I wasn't about to make this easier for her. She sighed. Ryan's gone. He left the day we walked out of your house. No surprise there, I muttered. I don't have anywhere to go, she admitted. My parents, they don't want me back home. I lost my job. Everything's just falling apart. I should have felt pity. I should have felt something, but I didn't. I just felt done. And that's my problem, how? I asked flatly. She let out a shaky breath. You don't have to be cruel. I clenched my jaw. Cruel? You tried to take my business. My house. You lied, cheated, and manipulated every step of the way. And now, because things didn't go your way, you want me to feel sorry for you? That's not what I'm asking for, she murmured. I guess I wanted to know if you ever really loved me. That made me pause. For all her scheming, all her selfishness, that was the first real question she had asked in a long time. And the truth? I had loved her. Once. Before she became this version of herself. Before the lies, before the greed, before she decided that what I built wasn't good enough for her. But that love was gone, and I wasn't going to pretend otherwise. So I gave her the only answer that mattered. I loved the woman I married. But that's not who you are anymore. Silence. Then, a quiet, I understand. I could hear the defeat in her voice. The acceptance. Goodbye, Vanessa, I said, and for the first time, I meant it. I hung up, blocked her number, and that was the end of it. I stared at my phone for a long moment, letting it all sink in. This was really over. No more battles, no more fights, no more Vanessa popping up with some new scheme. She had finally accepted her loss, and I had finally closed that chapter of my life. I slid my phone back into my pocket, turned back to the blueprints, and smiled to myself. For the first time in a long time, my future was mine again. The first real sign that I had moved on wasn't the moment Vanessa walked away for good. It wasn't when I blocked her number or when I threw out every last reminder of her from my house. It was when I stopped thinking about her altogether. At first, it was small things. I'd wake up and not expect to hear her voice in the kitchen. I'd go to bed at night and not feel the absence of her presence next to me. My days felt lighter, easier, like I was breathing fresh air for the first time in years. Then, one day, I realized something that made me pause in the middle of a work meeting. I couldn't remember the last time I had felt angry about any of it. Vanessa had taken enough from me. She had wasted enough of my time, my energy, my thoughts. And for what? She had lost. She had nothing. And me? I was thriving. My business was booming. The high-end renovation project I had thrown myself into was nearing completion, and it was my best work yet. Clients were rolling in, referrals stacking up. My team was growing, and I was finally investing back into myself rather than trying to fix a woman who had never deserved me in the first place. I had even started making plans for my own house, renovations I had put off because, for so long, I had been waiting to see if it would still be mine. Now there was no doubt. Every inch of it belonged to me. One Saturday morning, I drove out to the hardware store, filling my truck with supplies, fresh paint, new fixtures, new flooring. I was going to rebuild everything, make the house feel like something fresh, a new start. I was in the checkout line when I heard someone say my name. I turned, and there she was. Vanessa. For the first time in months, I was looking at her again. Not through a phone screen. Not through the filter of legal battles and courtroom fights. Just her. But she wasn't the same woman who had once walked into that courtroom with Ryan on her arm, radiating confidence and entitlement. She wasn't the same woman who had tried to smile through her failure, pretending she was still in control. No, this Vanessa looked hollow. Her hair was pulled into a loose ponytail, dark circles under her eyes. She was wearing clothes that weren't her usual designer picks. Just jeans and a plain sweater. She looked like someone who had fallen hard and never quite got back up. I didn't say anything at first, just waited. She forced a small smile. Hey. I nodded. Hey. An awkward silence stretched between us. For the first time, she seemed nervous around me. Vanessa had always carried herself like she was in control, even when she wasn't. But now, she wasn't sure what to say. I shifted, glancing at the cart of supplies beside me. You need something? Her smile faltered, her fingers tightening around the strap of her purse. No, I just saw you here. Thought I'd say hello. I nodded again, waiting for whatever was coming next. Because this wasn't just a hello. She hesitated, then let out a breath. You look good. I didn't bother returning the compliment. She swallowed. I heard your business is doing well. Yep. More silence. Finally, she bit her lip, then said it. The thing I knew was coming the moment I saw her. I miss you. There it was. I let out a slow breath, studying her carefully. A few months ago, those words would have gotten to me. A few months ago, I might have stopped to consider what she really meant, whether there was some part of her that actually regretted everything. But now, I just felt nothing. Vanessa, I said, my voice calm, even. You don't miss me. You miss the life you lost. Her eyes widened slightly, as if she hadn't expected me to see through her so easily. You miss the house. You miss the security. You miss knowing that someone was always there, ready to pick up the pieces when you made a mess of things, I continued. But me? You never really wanted me. And we both know that. She blinked rapidly, looking down. For the first time, she had no argument. No comeback. No clever remark. She started. But I shook my head. Vanessa, don't. She looked up, and I saw something in her eyes I had never seen before. Regret. Not the manipulative kind. Not the kind she used to fake her way back into control. This was real. But it didn't matter anymore. You made your choice, I said simply. Now live with it. She opened her mouth, but I was already turning back to the cashier, sliding my card into the machine. Take care, Vanessa. I didn't look back. I loaded my supplies into the truck, got in, and drove home. And with every mile I put between us, I felt lighter. That was the moment I knew, really knew, that I was free. Because when she said she missed me, I realized I didn't miss her at all.